And Judy will begin now with the opening and thematic reading of the day from Psalm 133.
Look at how good and pleasing it is when families live together as one.
And the second reading today from Badenoch, a poem called Miracle by Amy G.S.A. Brooks. This is Pat Free from Badenoch.
Good morning. This is Miracle by Amy G.S.A. Brooks, whom I see. Beautiful poem, Miracle. Yes, I saw my share of miracles. They are not, perhaps, as thrilling as others you have read about. But marvel at this. Once at the end of a long day, we gathered with aching feet and empty stomachs, and he said, "Well, what's to eat?" So Philip baked bread, and we each shared a little left from lunch so that we might continue to enjoy each other's company. Wonder at this. One day, as we all tried to enter a home in Capernaum, we found the doorway too narrow to allow us to usher through the followers who were paralyzed or older or injured. He said, "What now?" But the homeowners willingly swung the hammers to knock out the door frame so that we might all be able to meet together. Consider this revelation. On one of our regular commutes to the more dangerous side of the lake, a storm of disagreement broke out among us as some disciples tallied up how much our meager budget was spent on others. And he said, "Well, and why not?" And a great calm spread across us as we each recalculated our definition of kin. Maybe my legends are too little to register as miracles, but for me, as I pass my days in a hostile world that wants nothing more than to divide the weakest from the pack and devour us whole, I hold on these tales as precious portents of a community worth building.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin with the sharing of my thoughts with a story of my mother, who passed away when I was 16. And I need you to understand that she was a woman of a great sense of humor and creativity, and she was someone who would get, develop an interest in a subject and decide to pick it up and do it, and she just would. And one of her passions was hand spinning and weaving and dyeing wool. And the day that came to mind when I was thinking about her is we were walking through one of the parks in the city of my hometown. I'm from Adelaide in South Australia. And she had just got into dyeing wool, and she was really into using natural dyes rather than store-bought. So she would, dye wool with onion skins and find out what color the fleece would turn. And she spotted high up in the tree some lichen, and she decided that what she needed to know in that moment, what she absolutely needed to know in that second, walking through a park in the city of my town, very well populated, so many people around me, I was a young teenager, she needed to know what color that particular lichen would turn the fleece if she used it to dye the wool. And it was not an academic question for her. She then decided to try and climb the tree to collect the lichen in the park, in the city, very well populated town, multiple people around. And as a teenager, I was mortified. I remember grabbing hold of her hand, standing on the ground as she was she was 4'11". She thought she could climb this tree. As she was trying to scale up the trunk of this tree to scrape lichen off so she could find out what color it would turn the fleece of the wool at home that she was going to spin into wool and make this garment. And she was set on answering that question. And I, again, a mortified teenager, grabbed her by the hand and had to convince her not to climb a tree in the middle of the city, in the middle of the park. And we laughed on the day, and I laugh more remembering it. It is one of my favorite memories of her. And a little bit, it makes me think of the way the significant people in our lives can tether us to the ground when we need grounding. And also her enthusiasm makes me think of the ways the significant people in our lives inspire us to want to know more, to imagine bigger, to do things with the full enthusiasm within us. And I hope that you have people in your life who perform those tasks for you, who perform those roles, who ground you when you need to be grounded, and who inspire you to reach out for more as well. And today, as I am thinking of this topic of fictive kinship, I have some thoughts to share on the assumptions and expectations that this world has on who our families are. Because we are, most of us, encultured in societies that want to be very specific about what a family looks like. And if we have been connected with or encountered religions or really strict mindsets, that can really influence the way our families can look. This 1960s assumption of the working male gendered father parent and the stay-at-home female gendered mother parent who produces the babies and has the small 2 point however many is the current number children to ensure that community continues to thrive, right? And one, that's never been the standard. It's really a fiction that that's what is normal. But two, the sending of that message serves a purpose for a part of society that would like to keep us into rigid roles in life. And I feel a little bit like I'm preaching to the choir here. I would be very surprised if anyone in this particular gathering was like, no, you're right. That's what a family looks like. That's the only way a family can look. But I think it's really important for communities like ours to push back against that as lovingly and as gently as we can in a climate when more and more our ability to choose our own way in life and to love honestly and diversely is actively under threat. So I titled the sermon, Finding family. And then in the description, I use the term fictive kinship. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the term fictive kinship. Another way of thinking of it, another term that you might hear is chosen family. Because that 1960s stereotype serves a purpose, and that purpose is capitalism, and that purpose is white supremacy culture, because it is a particular type of person who is encouraged to continue to have children, and is a particular type of person who are Black, Indigenous, women of color, people of color, who are discouraged from having children and at times actively prevented from doing so. And I wasn't going to talk as much in this message on this part of the topic. But on this day, it feels important that we take a pause and remember what is at stake when our bodily autonomies are under threat. And what is at stake is, again, our ability to love diversely and live with the choices that we would choose to make, and how they may differ from the roles that realistically a very small group of people would like to enforce on all of us. All of that to say, I'd like to look at the third principle of acceptance of one another and the encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, hand in hand with this idea of the miracle of fictive kinship, of found family, of chosen family. Because while I would like to believe that every single one of us has lived a life untouched by pain or untroubled by any sort of difficulties whatsoever, I know the opposite to be true. And I know that some of that extends to our encounters with people of faith and people of other faiths to our own, who hold different belief systems, sorry. And I want to say that 1960s stereotype of the man, the woman, and the 2 point however many little babies, that extends to those belief systems where people are siloed into a monoculture, promised they can come just exactly as they are, and when they come in the doors, they are appointed roles according to the external appearance that others take them for. And the goal of the community is to make sure that everybody grows to understand and believe the same things as truth. Perhaps you're familiar with that kind of faith community. And honestly, it's not just happening in churches. It happens in a lot of toxic workplaces too. We welcome you to work here in all of your diversity, and we really want to encourage and uplift that. And then you get into the workplace, and well, here are the things we value at this workplace, and you need to live and present yourself in ways that uplift our values. It's why, to me, this is so important. This principle is so important, that we are seeking to be together in a different way, that we are not looking to build a monoculture of people who all adhere to one truth. To me, that is what makes the UU life so powerful and beautiful and moving and important. We are invited into a found family. We are invited to gather in our communities and uplift each other, to support each other, to be present to each other in our struggles, and to be present with each other in those highlights and joys of life. And it can be really hard. It can be very difficult when the end goal is not, I just need you to be the same as me. It can be very difficult to understand the worth and value of each other when that is itself the end goal. So to me, there's two parts of this principle. The first is what I've been talking about really, and that is the acceptance of one another. And the second part to me is that encouragement to spiritual growth. I'd love to say that I am perfect, but guess what? I'm sure there are perfect people in the Zoom room, like, you know who you are. You're the perfect people, right? Some of us are not perfect. Some of us still have learning to do. And what is, I am so often surprised in such a beautiful and delightful way at all the ways that we can spark new learning in each other, new spiritual growth together, even while sharing such diverse identities and viewpoints on the world. There are times that I have needed my community to very lovingly pull me aside and to say, I don't know that you are living at your best right now. And that has been times when I have just needed to rest more. There has been times when I have been speaking out of ignorance because I haven't understood an issue well enough and yet have decided to speak on it anyway, as we often do, don't we? Right? That there has been times when I have fallen victim to my own failings of impatience and anger. And those things themselves are not necessarily failings, but I recognize them when I see them in myself. And I have needed to come to the gathering of people who know me better and who love me more boldly and who inspire me to reach into the branches of the tree, because I can't stop wondering what might happen if I could find out. The people who have held my hand and grounded me while I've reached for the sky. At this time, in this society where we live, there are threats against our freedoms. And we face a reality that we cannot, with our individual efforts, perfection our way out of it. And so it is more important than ever that communities like ours come together, accepting one another and encouraging each other, building community in good and pleasing ways, because we will need each other. We need each other. We need each other. Amen.